What is going on, Cyber fam? We got another exciting one today. I'm actually super late on this point, and that's on purpose because I wanted to enjoy my holidays, so forgive me for that. But there's a few other Palantir channels that have taken this and sort of flown with it. Palantir Vision is one of them, so go check out his video, really super detailed. But what I want to do, as usual, is take an actual technical look at it. Now, what I'm talking about here, let's just get to the point, is a Twitter user by the name of Either Square. I'll link his handle right here. Posted basically just a huge leak. I'll touch on what this means in the grand scheme of things, but basically there's like a leaked document, or what he calls the dossier on Palantir, or DOP. It's apparently the Christmas edition. So Either Square, man, big shout out to you. Good work on this one. It's really crazy. So anyway, so the point is, it's basically a long PDF. You know, I'll post. Go check out his Twitter. Like, I want you to get it from his tweet and his thread. I'll link what I can in the description below. But basically, guys, he compiled this sort of PDF that describes a few things, right? So we're going to get into this from a technical perspective, okay? Like, I know lots of people blow up over like what kind of companies these are and stuff like that. And I'll touch on that a little bit. But I mean, I don't want to speak to stuff like that because I want to speak to the things I know and what I can speculate on and the things that matter to me for my investment in Palantir. So that's really what this channel is about. So let's take a look at this leak, man. Let's take a look at this thing. Okay, check this out. This is awesome, man. It's like so freaking cool. Either Square, dude, awesome work. Anyway, so it even has like a table of contents where you'll find like official links, some code names. So it looks like he just deciphered some of the code name stuff, which is pretty cool. Like, man, you're really putting a lot of work in this thing, which is super awesome. Companies working with Foundry is really key. Very, very big, important thing that I'm looking for, because Foundry so far is starting to become their like flagship, you know, biggest moneymaker in terms of stuff. There's other stuff like Apollo, I think is pretty cool. I'm still doing my technical review on it. By the way, guys, if you want to see all my like technical reviews from a code perspective, technical, then you know, I'll post a link over here. You can go ahead and check it out. But anyway, so let's get into this thing. Complete list of every known and current active link. So apparently, here's the kind of crappy part though, right? Apparently, we're not going to find any intentional bullshit, which is I don't know. Like, I'm really looking for that sometimes, right? And a method of how I found everything. Yeah, so he's not going to get into how we got this stuff, which is like stupid. Like, why? If we have people like this in the community that have the ability to go and get this stuff, why do you want to go and find out how they got it, right? There's certain validation steps where, you know, you can ask, and then if he's like, yeah, I did it like this, and you can, it makes sense to you, it is what it is. But I would say anything like this, it's not official from Palantir, so treat it as it is, right? If it sounds like bullshit and comes out like bullshit, then it's probably bullshit. So, but I think this one is pretty legit. So then he gives us thanks, and I'll let you guys read on to it later. But there's a few domain names where I can actually speak to the actual technology that they're using. I can tell you like what kind of stuff is done from those technologies, at least from, like, I'm really speculating here, right? Because we're just going based on domain names. Now, before we get into this, right, the domain name bit, just so you guys understand, it's not like 100%, okay? So when you create these kind of domains within your stack, right, you kind of just leave the domain names when you spin them up. And it's kind of common practice to just kind of not mess with it, because it is going to be on your end anyway. You're not really doing things where, you know, you have to change it to something specific, right? Also, it helps because, you know, if you need to onboard staff, especially technical staff, you can say, okay, you want to look at Vault, then you're going to go to vault.blah companyname.com or something, right? So that's where this comes from. So I can tell you from that perspective, but just keep in mind, it's just a domain name. Other things can be there. It may not even be what it is, what I'm saying. So take that with a grain of salt, okay? Now, before we get in, let's get into this thing. I know a few YouTubers touched on this already, but here's my point here, okay? So these are the non-confirmed companies on Foundry, okay? Accenture, Pfizer, General Electric, GM, Wendy's, HSBC, Lockheed Martin, RBC, PepsiCo, Comcast. Man, there's a bunch here. I did take a look at these, the things I'm looking for, and you guys have to understand, like, you can't get too whipped out of shape about this stuff, right? Because in reality, guys, the big companies on this list will probably use it for a smaller set of their data, and the small companies will use it for a larger set of data. So we don't know the importance of how these guys are viewing Foundry. So like, it's not, you know, we can't get too excited that, oh my God, it's going to completely take over, because we don't know these things yet, right? We'll know based on the contract details and what they signed and how they signed it and the terms and that kind of stuff. Anyway, the thing I'm looking for is actually not the companies themselves, right? Because you guys got to understand, a lot of different companies, especially based on different sectors, could have very similar data sets or types of data or categories of data, right? You guys see what I'm saying here? So it doesn't matter how many they settle. Of course, it matters for the bottom line. But the thing is, money is not important to them as much as the variety of data that's coming in and the inferences that they draw from the modeling and all this other stuff, right? So if you have like 1,000 companies, it could be great for the bottom line, but if all those 1,000 companies are the same kind of companies, you have a very similar data set. So your training models, all this stuff are, like you're tweaking them to a specific model rather than it being a little more agnostic. So there's quite a variety of list of like companies here, right? So there's like some people managing companies. There's some really like funny consumer companies like Dave & Buster's. The ones I'm looking for though, this shows me that there's some like real interest, right? Look at this. There's like RBC, right? So RBC was one of them. Canadian Peel Bank of Commerce. My wife actually used to work there. So CIBC is like CIBC and RBC are basically one of the top 4 banks in Canada. It's like Canada in general is a banking sector, right? Toronto especially is a financial district, and it is like these guys are massive players. What are they using the data for? Not sure. I did work for a company that sold them SaaS software, and they used it for like a really small subset. They have so many departments, so many different data sets. It really, we don't really know. We can't know. But if they somehow get into capital markets or somehow get into like some sort of like consumer side first party data, that could be huge. Actually, that could be very big, because there's a capitulation in the advertising market where everyone's going towards first party data, and these guys are actually right now trying to find solutions to how to segregate and segment their first party data. So I don't know how Foundry could help there, but it could be something. Yeah, so General Motors, I think General Motors and Wendy's and PepsiCo are going to get like the major headlines here. Pfizer is a pretty big one, because we don't know what they're using Foundry for. It could be for some kind of supply chain stuff, right? Which is huge. General Motors, I almost 100% think it's going to be either factory optimization or supply chain for sure. HSBC is another bank. It seems like there is a decent, healthy variation of potential data sets here. Some of these companies are bigger than others, so you're going to have different kinds of things within. Like Deloitte's a good one. Deloitte has multiple departments, lots of different data coming in, going out. Deloitte and Accenture actually might be using it to leverage Foundry to then go outward into the consulting business. I work with Deloitte and Accenture consultants all the time, and they have a pretty big back end of just random tools that they use to increase their productivity, increase their the things that they tell their clients and stuff like that. So Foundry could be used for some sort of middleman process there. Magna International is another one. For sure is supply chain there, in my opinion. I think this is going to give us not really anything in the next 5-6 months, but as this list grows, we'll be able to actually see Foundry get into bigger and bigger companies for bigger and bigger projects. Most of the time, these guys, like, think about it. Small companies will take on Foundry because it's expensive and apply to everything. But big companies will take on Foundry. It's probably not as expensive to them, but they'll want to try it, test pilot out first, right? So they'll assign it to some sort of like smaller data sets. You kind of see what the inference is, and then move from there. Just keep that in mind. So just so you guys know, this ingress proxy and APIs Adonis, it seems like, these are obviously going to be forbidden and protected, because it seems like they're using this as an internal process. This LAPIS Adonis could be something like a, gateway or something into like other domains within, or other sort of nodes and clusters within that sort of space. So you're not going to be able to get in there. This ingress proxy is just, it could just be a load balancer. Yeah, it is. See, ELB.us. Yeah, so this is AWS. So this is Amazon Web Services that they're using. This is basically a load balancer that goes and says, okay, like a gate that allows people in accordingly based on like load, based on how many people are at the door. It's kind of like a bouncer at a club. All right. I only say that because I used to be a bouncer at a club. All right, here we go. Complete list of subdomains. Now, this is kind of the main meat and potatoes I want to get into. Again, not very accurate, but if it is what it says it is, then it shows you like what kind of technologies they're using, open source and that kind of stuff, right? Okay, so the things I'm looking for here, yeah, so container registry straight up tells me that they're using microservice architecture. Now, they might not be using this for everything, but they're most likely using this for some capacity or a large capacity of their stuff. Okay, long story short, in the old days, and not even that long ago, companies a lot of times used to write massive web applications or massive applications, web or non-web, that hosted all of the business logic. So anything that you would need to do. So for instance, if you click the button, it would do this, and then it would move you to this page, and then move information from one page to another and that kind of stuff. That's all business logic. It would all be stored within one application, okay? So when you had to deploy this application, it would be like massive. Like it would be one application with all that business process deployed into some environment. So it'll just be really, really big and chunky. Also, if anything had to fail, you know, like you're almost taking down an entire application to just fix like one or two things, right? Microservice architecture actually takes all that logic and makes it into its own little entity. Okay, so it's very, very efficient in a way where if one thing fails, you can just go and fix it. The whole application doesn't crash. It's just one component, and you don't have to take down anything or do some sort of like crazy maintenance scoop and all that stuff, right? Like a lot of times people say, oh, the site is closed for maintenance, right? This is what I'm talking about. When they say site is closed for maintenance, most of the time they're running some kind of monolith. Worst case scenario, if they are doing microservice, their entire like clusters like fucked. And by the way, this microservice arc is very, very modern. Okay, it's not like a lot of these tech companies, and I'm not including Fang because Fang is cutting edge. Okay, but a lot of the higher tech companies, Salesforce and all these other guys, they don't always do things up to date. Okay, just to let you guys know. Okay, I've worked for companies where, you know, they claim that they're like, you know, bleeding edge, leading edge and all this stuff. They're not. They have a lot of legacy stuff that they're carrying and a lot of things that are keeping the lights on from the back. So you got to remember that. That's one of the reasons why like a lot of, you know, Fang and all these stuff, they just have such a comfortable lead in terms of like technology, right? They're just that much better because they just move that much faster, and their technology is that much better because they're able to adapt faster and basically pioneer these new architectures and stuff. Like microservice architecture, a lot of it was really made famous a lot by Netflix. Ooh, BlackBerry up Palantir Gov. Interesting. I wonder if this is BlackBerry. I used to work for BlackBerry, so maybe I'll contact some folks and see what they're doing with that. That might be interesting. Just so you guys know, anytime you do any projects with the government, they always request you to have specific subdomains separate to any of your public stuff. You'll have to have a different sort of like networking and routing policy, and it has to be completely different, like in a different region and all this other stuff. That's how they make you do it. All right. There's a lot here. There's definitely a lot here. There's a few things that stand out to me. I'm not going to touch on everything. You guys can take a look. If you are fairly technical, you know, you know some of these domains. Also, guys, just to caveat this real quick, these are subdomains. So this could be that vendors and clients and stuff are actually asking Palantir to do stuff within their, you know, local domain and stuff. So this might not exactly be Palantir's internal workings. This could be something that they're leveraging for clients as well. So just keep that in mind. It is a little bit of an abstraction, but it could very well be the case. BISC Postgres. So Postgres is actually a SQL database. So it just shows that they're using a SQL database. Not that big of a deal. Everyone's using that, right? The stuff that's really cool to me is things like Splunk, right? All this stuff is, okay, put it this way. A lot of companies, when they get into this kind of stuff, they build the application, right? And this is why you have a lot of breaches and companies like CrowdStrike and stuff even exist. So you have a lot of people that build applications, don't actually know what they're doing. And I'm one of them too. I'm not like some expert, right? But the difference is, some engineers will build these applications and for some reason they're squeezed out of scope, which means that people just want to get it done faster. And they leave out very key components like documentation, logging, security in a lot of instances, you know, monitoring, alerting and all that kind of stuff, okay? Just from the fact that they're using Splunk goes away, and this might not even be for Palantir themselves, right? This could be for a vendor or for a client, but it shows that there's some level of integration, okay, that comes into the Palantir system and actually pulls out and does some stuff. So folks are actually looking at this and saying, okay, like, you know what, we need to do this right and go from there. So Splunk is basically like really just using for logging, alerting, and monitoring. Man, like some of this stuff here is literally what I do on a day-to-day basis. Like it's a big part of my day-to-day. Jenkins, Jira, see Jenkins, another Jenkins, Vault with Terraform, Docker, Grafana, GitHub, Artifactory. So guys, like from that whole list, right, what I see, and this is what I'm like confirming for myself, right, is I see things like Vault, I see things like Jenkins, Terraform, it's mostly open source stuff. This entire thing is actually sort of known as DevOps 2.0 and 3.0. So as I was telling you before, this is all part of like the whole microservice architecture and all this other stuff, right? That's just talking about the code perspective, okay? So microservices, I explained to you before. But the thing is, there's a whole level on top of that, okay? You have to actually get your code into whatever environment, right? So whatever sort of cluster or whatever it's sitting on. Now, traditionally, you have, again, a big web server and an application like some kind of Java application or .NET application, big application that runs on it. You deploy to it. There'll be a brief time when, you know, it'll kind of like go down for a bit. I'm talking way old school. And then they'll come back up when you finish deploying, and then Bob's your uncle. With microservices, everything is cluster based. So like you have things like Kubernetes and all this other stuff that basically you can deploy into a cluster, and you have policies within the cluster itself saying, okay, if something dies, then just spin it back up from here. Or there's lots of self-regulating stuff in there. Okay, I don't want to, again, it's tough. I'd love to talk about this all damn day, right? I can get pretty technical on this, but I'm trying to dumb it down a little bit. So the key factor to this is that they're using cutting edge provisioning and deployment strategies. The benefit of the modern deployment strategies and the modern provisioning strategies and that kind of stuff for architecture is night and day. Like I was telling you guys in another video before you would have to have folks who were cloud engineers actually go into the cloud, or even through command line or something, go and spin up resources based on whatever cloud proprietary steps that they would have to follow for AWS or Azure or GCP, whatever. So now you have things like Terraform. So you basically write like some code. It could just be like 10 lines or something. You run it, and as long as you're connected to your instance, like as long as you're connected with your account, you're spinning up instances in the cloud in under a few minutes. Very, very powerful stuff. Then you have things like Vault. So Vault, again, is another HashiCorp product. Now, by the way, guys, I'm actually looking into this company. It's a publicly traded company. The ticker sign is HCP. I'm actually looking into this because I use this product every day, and I think it is absolutely crazy. I just don't know the business fundamentals, so I'm still looking into that. But HashiCorp is like really, they're leading the way. From the microservices side, you see things like Docker. So Docker is actually the containers. That's when I told you they split up the business logic. They put it inside each of the containers, and then they use that container as a self-running service, put it that way. You take everything from one big locker, and then you put it into smaller lockers within the same space of that one big locker. If you ever need to get something from locker, AB, you just go to AB instead of going to the entire big locker, opening the whole thing. Now, the last step I was talking about was things like Jenkins. Jenkins, again, tons of stuff in here that's like super open source, which I'm excited about. I love open source stuff. The community is great, and it's pretty much free, guys. I mean, like, why? Like, you get enterprise grade software for free, basically, right? So it's like really cool. Jenkins is basically a place that runs some automation. So if you want to deploy your code, Jenkins will do it for you. It'll actually go into your code base and deploy it to wherever it needs to go. It's an automation abstraction. Open source, really, like, it's cheap, it's free, and it's been around for ages. So they're combining older things that have been around for ages and have worked for decades with cutting edge strategies. So they're employing methods that they're going to give them basically no downtime, right? And Lord knows these guys hire the best engineers, right? So while the rest of the world is catching up with DevOps 2.0 and hiring people like myself who actually know this kind of stuff to help them through the process, these guys are like leading the way with this kind of software, right? So this goes to show you the speed and efficiency. This is the kind of stuff you don't see. This is the kind of stuff you don't see in other companies, because you never see the tech and how the inner workings of it are run. I don't know. Conviction grows daily, guys. This speaks to me because, again, I work with this stuff on a daily basis. But yeah, that's it for me. All I'll say is, don't get too excited about the company list. Honestly, you look at it not from a company perspective, but from like a variation of data perspective, because that's what matters. This is a tech company that's focused on data. It doesn't matter how many contracts they sign. It just matters how they build their product, how the platform starts learning, and how the platform improves. Remember that. Like, you shouldn't be looking for that kind of growth now. If even 2 or 3 of these companies have diversifying data sets, they'll be able to like learn better as to how they can optimize for these things and then apply that. Look for the variation in the data, guys, all right? Answer's always in the data, man. I think I'm done beating this dead horse. We'll leave it there. So feel free to let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. I know this was kind of super technical. I always enjoy chatting with you folks. So that's it for me. Catch y'all later. Peace.